Good morning. Back for another episode of Breakthrough.
Howdy. We are here.
We are here. And there's been quite a buzz out on the internet and social media platforms about Harrison Butker's commencement address. This is a season of graduations, and various colleges and institutions are inviting their speakers, prominent speakers who are leaders today. But this one has caused quite a stir, and people, I'm not promoting that we go and watch it, but just if you haven't heard it or listened to it or read it, it's just about a 20-minute address where Mr. Butker, denounces the rights of women, Pride Month, COVID-19 lockdowns, and the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion when he presented this commencement address at Benedictine College. It's a Catholic liberal arts college in Atchison, Kansas. He also told women in the audience to embrace their vocation of homemaker.
Yeah. I bet you, so just for context, Harrison Butker is a kicker in the NFL for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a very good kicker. He's very, very, one of the greats right now, very gifted. And his views as a Catholic have not been quiet or hidden. Anyone who watches the NFL or has any idea of Catholic, sports culture, so to speak, I've kind of known about him and about his views about Latin Mass and some things for a while. And it's never really been anything that I would say is problematic. It's, he's always been one of the people who is living that kind of lifestyle, and it inspires him. And great, more power to you. I think there's a lot of really powerful leaders who have that. But when it was displayed this way, in this manner, through this speech, some alarms went off and some things were said, and then it's just kind of spun into a whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. Gosh.
And it's a big church, so how everyone worships and prays with their God, to their God, it's up to them, whatever is leading them to that deeper relationship of that. However, even though it's a Benedictine college, the Benedictine Sisters of Mount St. Scholastica did take issue with his address. And this is a quote from them and their response. Instead of promoting unity in our church, our nation, and our world, his comments seem to have fostered division. One of our concerns was the assertion that being a homemaker is the highest calling for a woman. We sisters have dedicated our lives to God and God's people, including the many women whom we have taught and influenced during the past 160 years. These women have made a tremendous difference in the world in their roles as wives and mothers, and through their God-given gifts in leadership, scholarship, and their careers. So, and we know, many great women who are wonderful mothers and also, influential professionals as well. A woman can be more than one thing,
I'm sorry, I keep giggling because I just there's moments where you just kind of, it's the weird conversation to be having. It's like, and it's weird on so many levels. I mean, it's like the fact that our church is still having this conversation really irks me. And it's funny, like how we can pick and choose our moments to lean into certain saints or certain stories for inspiration, and then a speech like this comes out and there becomes this division when it shouldn't be a division. It should be pretty clear cut that there's a problem here with this language and this divisiveness and this style of presentation. And I took offense to it. I'll speak from my perspective as a man, as a husband, as a father, and as a Catholic, because I didn't feel seen in Harrison's presentation of the Catholic faith and the family life. And I know that the women that I know in my life weren't seen.
Mm-hmm.
And right off the bat, that becomes a problem. That becomes an issue. I know it's exhausting. Honestly, it's really exhausting, and the tension too. I really am so sick of, and I won't get too passionate here, but I'm just really sick of the negative energy of people that feel like we're in constant wartime. Like you get these people like, and I actually think, I know he said don't watch it, or I don't know. If you got patience, like go watch it. I would say don't read the transcript. Watch his video, his presentation, because to read it is one thing, and you could take it and pick different things apart and go, oh, it wasn't too bad. This wasn't too bad. But to hear his voice, his inflection, the way in which he's delivering, and the passion that he's delivering his speech with, I think was a bigger problem for me, along with what he said. But the bigger thing was, he just seemed like a really tense person at times. And I just don't think our church needs that right now. I just think it's really troublesome. We don't need this anger, this diabolical lies, this feeling like it's us against the world. The Catholic world doesn't, the world outside doesn't want Catholics to have a voice. I don't know. Yeah.
And he does mention in the address that, we fear speaking truth because now, unfortunately, truth is in the minority. But again, whose truth, was he speaking, or are we speaking?
Yeah.
And we're not here to question if he's a man of faith or Liz's faith as he knows how to, but all people of goodwill do that, However, you, Cristian, really decided to sit down and write a thoughtful, clear response entitled, "No, Mr. Butker, men alone do not set the tone," which I'm sure received many reactions from both sides. And I can tell you from the CSSJ family, all very positive and proud that, you took the time to do this. But you point out too that the biggest issue with his message is a general lack of awareness of the lived experience of others within our greater church. So maybe, what moved you to respond, and maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit. I'm putting you on the hot seat here.
No, I already put myself on the hot seat by writing it.
That's good. Well, let's
first
heat it up.
I just want to give a shout out to U.S. Catholic and the Sisters of St. Joseph, but for the opportunity to write this and to kind of put this out there as one of the pieces in the Catholic Voices section of U.S. Catholics magazine. It was a really honor, and it was a lovely collaboration. They were really, really excited for the perspective. What moved me was, I heard everyone buzzing about it. It was like last weekend or whatever, and I was kind of curious. So I watched the speech, and I had my own reaction to it, and I just don't agree with him. But I will say this though, and I hope people read it. I know some of the comments that have been negative, I don't feel like those people really read it all. I think they just kind of read a little bit of an idea, or like the beginning of it, and took a thing, and it's, this is another, liberal Catholic, which I would not identify myself as that. I'm just a Catholic man living my life. But I took offense to just his lack of inclusion of the diverse experiences of our church. And I want to say too, I'm sure he's a really nice guy. Like I'm sure Harrison's a really nice guy. He's probably a great dad, great husband. I've heard people say really good things about him. I've heard Catholics, some creative people that I know who have worked with him on projects in the past, say he's a really cool guy. And that's great. And so good for him. But I think his approach to the microphone in that moment of saying these things about politics, saying these things at a commencement address, is problematic to the greater mission of what our church is trying to do. And that is be a church of communion, be a church of unity. To call Pride Month, like one of the deadly sins is just so hurtful language. Now, listen, I'm not going to agree with you, but you can have your opinions about different topics in culture and the way that but to just be so aggressive in that way. I always think, and this is my experience as being a teacher, my experience of being a campus minister, is that regardless of whatever my opinion is, if I'm in front of a crowd of people, I have to be so mindful of the fact that you don't know who's in that crowd, and you don't know how your words can impact somebody. And doesn't mean that you should be silent, as he's saying. It doesn't mean that you should be weak. It doesn't mean that that's all this stuff, but you just don't know. And having been through my own journey of being adopted and, you know, my own little traumas in my life and whatnot, like, we don't know where people are at in their journey, and something you say could trigger something. And so I just thought his speech just was like, he clearly wanted to make a point and he left out a lot. And so I felt really inspired to just start writing about that and writing about this, the reality of, there's a lot of good, here's the thing, he's 28, I think, right? 29. I'm 31. I do not feel confident to ever give a commencement address. And I think there's something to be said about that too, about the experience of living life and having more diverse experiences, listening to more people, developing this thing. So I also feel for the young people who have power in our culture right now, who are given a microphone and saying, do this, because it's dangerous. And that, I don't envy that at all. So I think that's a lot of pressure too. But yeah, I just thought he got a lot of things wrong, and I think it's problematic. And I honestly think for the people that work in the church, like you and I, who are out here trying to build bridges, when Harrison Butkers of the world come out and give speeches, it makes our life so much harder. Yeah. Because now we have to break down these barriers in our communities to say, hey, like, the greater church does love you. The greater church does want to have a conversation with you. Like, those people don't speak for all of us. And I feel like I'll be honest with you, I feel like I've been putting out these fires my entire career as a young man, as a white man, as a Catholic, as someone who does enjoy going to mass, who does enjoy the tradition of the church. I feel like there's been presumptions of what I think and who I am. And yeah, it's problematic. It's just not good.
And the importance of, I would say, speaking up for others, in a broad sense, and also allowing others to have their voice, you know, and not think that I can be a voice of another. I mean, I can stand alongside of one. I've heard of people's experiences. I can speak from what they have shared, but I can't be their voice. So how do we create the space for all those voices to be heard? And, you know, as I said, you know, it's a big church, but we're called, you know, to continue to co-create that church that is inclusive and diverse. And we know that for any life form to do more than survive, in order for life to thrive, it has to be diverse. Yeah. You know, because without diversity, you know, monocultures do not survive anywhere. Yeah. You know? So how do we really create the space where there is that diversity to understand more deeply another perspective? Because again, you know, there's that wonderful Haitian proverb, we see from where we stand. Yeah. You know, I do not, I don't live the life of a football player or a place kicker. You know, I enjoy sports. I enjoy watching them and playing some sports, but that's not my profession. You know, I can rant and rave. Let's rant and rave a little bit more here, because there's all these other elements too of his speech that were problematic. Like there's the faith element and the idea of roles in family and all this, which I'll speak to the female part in a second. Not too much because it's not my place, but that whole experience too. But then there's also, just outside of the religious aspect, the privilege element of his speech. And again, I am not one of those people that's like, these guys get paid too much money. Yeah, they get paid too much money because we're willing to pay for the tickets. And where's my cup? I got my Giants helmet right here. I'm not shy about it. I'm a huge Giants fan. I go to games. I contribute to the system. So I'm not going to sit here and get mad when a player signs a big contract, because guess what? I got their jersey in my closet and I love it. And so, yeah, whatever. I'm part of the problem. So, but I will say this, that when you do, and I've heard other celebrities say this, that when you do get to a certain point in your success, you have to be mindful of the fact that you are not fully connected to the human experience anymore. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. Doesn't mean you don't have a voice. But you do need to be mindful when you give it a commencement address. Hey, I'm a kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs. I got some things to inspire you about. But like, I'm going to tell you that my wife
is a homemaker who really loves this. All this. Great. I would love to be a homemaker. I would love to be me, at least. I'm not gonna say that for my wife. My dream is to be Mr. Mom. I would love to be able to be in a position where one of us could be home with our child all the time and love. It's such a lovely thing. You know how hard it is for parents to leave to go to work
Yeah.
at times?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So this idea too of just privilege and financial stability. I mean, I'm not going to dive too much into my own financial, thing here. My wife and I are very fortunate. We can afford to live on Long Island, and we have a lovely life. But guess what? Even with both of our careers, it's very hard to live in America.
Yeah.
It's very hard to thrive in America right now, especially as young adults. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of stories of people who are leaving their place that they're from because they got to find something cheaper, or they got to get they got to get a union job, or they got to take a civil service test, all these things. So there's that problem too. And I say this to Harrison, there's that problem too, Harrison, of a disconnect of being mindful of what your experience is compared to what some of the people in your crowd, what their experience might be. They might have a death in the family. They might have to be providing for others. And so that was my other criticism too of his piece. And then to just speak to about the female aspect too. I mentioned in the article, I'm adopted. I've said this is very public. I'm adopted. I'm from Bucharest, Romania. Bucharest, Romania is a country that is full of abortion, pro-choice, pro-life dialogue and struggles. And it was a very pro-abortion country when I was born. And my birth mother chose to give birth to me and put me up for adoption. I am pro-life. I'm not afraid to say I am a pro-life person, but I am also very hyper aware of the nuances of what a radical pro-life or pro-choice perspective is. I saw through my own experience of learning about my country what a radical pro-life dictatorship did to that country. Mm-hmm. Having Ceausescu in saying, abortions are banned and all these different things caused a huge ripple effect that damaged that culture and that country and the women of that country severely. Now, I don't agree with abortion personally in my life, but I understand the nuances of where we can't have sweeping perspectives, right? So Harrison, and the Harrisons out there, I get it, man. Like, we want to be pro-life as a church because it's what Catholic social teaching is, but it's not as easy as you want it to be.
Right. And
then on the other end of it too, been through that experience of being adopted and being adopted into a family that couldn't bear children. Again, his speech just missed all the nuances of what the lived experience is. Yeah. And then not even to mention my wife, who's the coolest, best person ever, who has this amazing career as a doctor of psychology. Never in our journey as a couple did I ever feel that we had to question our decision for a family for her career. It was always yes and to both.
Yeah. And pro-life, who wouldn't want to be pro-life, but pro-life in a sense that all flourish because there's a just distribution of goods and resources. They're not limited or whatever, And if I would venture to say, and I don't think this is naive, I think this is a piece of truth, is that if people were able, they would always choose life.
Yeah,
they would always choose life. You spoke a little bit more, and saying that as men, this is your words, we do not set the tone of culture. But maybe just speak a little bit more about some of the tone setters in life. I think they're important for all of us.
Yeah.
To have tone setters.
Well, that was the one quote that I was like the most shocked that people aren't picking up more on. So like everyone that's doing the clickbaity thing about Butker's speech are all doing the homemaker thing, and there are a lot of people who are really taking that out of context, because and I want to say this too publicly here, he does say lovely things about his wife. He gets choked up. He clearly has a beautiful relationship with his wife and a mutual understanding of what their marriage is. And that's wonderful. Good for him. I've heard other NFL players who aren't Catholic say how they wouldn't be able to have the careers they have if their wife or their partner didn't understand. It's a grueling process being a football player. And I'm not saying like, oh, I feel bad for them, but like, it's a lot of the amount of prep that goes into that lifestyle, and then the coaches too, and the equipment people, all these different people, right? So, but he says in it, men set the tone for our culture. When he starts to address men, he shifts from the women perspective, and then he says, men, we set the tone for our culture. And he doesn't say and women. And that, to me, I'm shocked more people aren't taking that and making that the thing, because that was the worst part, in my opinion. And I just totally disagree. Now I get what he's saying about throughout history, men have set the tone of culture. Yeah, and they've also done a lot of bad things.
Well, we want to look at history and how history continues to repeat itself, because only half the population is setting the tone, so to say.
So yeah, as a fact, as a historical fact, sure, men have made more decisions, but is that good? Probably not, right? But yeah, and I totally disagree with that. And in my piece, I said no, like the Sisters of St. Joseph. I mean, I'll say for me, like, I grew up Catholic. When I came here from Romania, I was adopted into a Catholic family. I grew up in a very typical parish life, which was great. It was awesome. I had no problems or anything like that. But I have to say, a lot of it from my childhood was very rote and just kind of your thing, and that's fine. But it really wasn't until I got older and I started to meet the Sisters of St. Joseph. I started to meet people of different backgrounds, different faiths. Women who I didn't agree with. You know, I remember I had a psychology professor who was Jewish, who was, you know, way more liberal and, you know, feminist movement kind of person. And she really scared me and inspired me to ask more. And we ended up having a really lovely bond. And I felt like a mutual respect was formed there. But it wasn't until I met those perspectives that I really started to understand the good of the Catholic faith to me. That's tone setting right there.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. And I have to say, there's been a lot of men in my life that have inspired me and have set a tone. Sure, coaches over the years, different things like that. There's also been a lot that I feel like haven't, and have been really problematic, that you know, again, putting out fires on their behalf. And so I just don't agree with that. And I think in today's society, like, we really have to be moving away from this idea that men set the tone. I mean, it's cartoonish to me.
Yeah. And we know, you know, in terms of Pope Francis, he's really, you know, working to bring, especially this whole synodality, you know, to really that it's a big church, and it is comprised of men and women. It is intergenerational, you know, voices across generations. That shared wisdom is so important, for sure.
That's good.
But there's also an importance too, you know, is to engage in the conversations with people who think differently.
Yeah.
You know, like you were saying with your one teacher, because then if I get a better understanding where someone is coming from, it makes me think more deeply about where I'm coming from, you know, and to be able to articulate that in a way that's understandable as well. Because the more I'm around people who think like I do, then I begin to think, well, everyone thinks this way, which it wouldn't be a bad thing. However, it's not reality. But to engage the diverse voices, because that is really what moves us to grow and stretch, for sure.
And most of us really, I think this, and I've been criticized for this in conversations before, but I don't really care. I really believe this. I think most of us, even if we are diverse in our opinions, deep down do want the same thing. And that's the thing too with Harrison's speech and the speeches like his. It sets this message, especially to young men in the audience. And I was reading some perspectives of the women in the audience who were saying a lot of the guys at the school were really fired up and kind of bro-ish about, and that's problematic, because the young men there are going to kind of have this feeling of, it's us against them. It's this, you know, someone's going to try to stop this thing. And we're seeing that in politics right now. And it's not. And if you really have conversations with people that you don't agree with, I think you'll be surprised to see how much you actually do agree on, and how at the end of the day, we all just want community. We all want to be safe. There's that song by Bruce Springsteen, Hungry Heart, which, you know, whatever, it's just a pop song. But there's a line at the end, like, everybody wants to find a home. Everybody needs a place to rest. Make no difference what nobody says. Everybody wants, everybody has a hungry heart.
Yeah.
And something along those lines. But it's a really interesting little verse about this idea of like, we all have a heart that hungers for safety, love, a home.
And to know and to be known and to belong. That's one of the first things in human development is that sense of belonging. To be wanted, to be needed, to be loved, and really that's the basic message, right? It's all about love. And how do I become a more loving person? How am I bringing that love out into the world? But just one more thing I had to pick up on, because I know you as a filmmaker, and you picked up on Mr. Butker's reference to Martin Scorsese's movie, The Silence. And you really, I'm glad that you noted this, because then you gave the full context of that scene that he speaks to. So maybe you could just share with our audience about that.
So right in the beginning of his speech, he gives a shout out to the movie Silence by Martin Scorsese, which was a book that was written by Shishaku Endo, who is a really, really influential, inspiring Japanese author, a Catholic author. And the movie, the thing he references is how the world wants Catholics to be silent. And he says so much so that Hollywood made a movie by a Catholic director, a director who claims to be Catholic, what he was insinuating, where it ends with the Jesuit priest dying after he had apostatized, meaning he abandoned his faith. He dies with a cross in his hand to symbolize that he must be Catholic in silence. And that's what the world wants. And again, this is the beginning of his speech where he sets the tone, pretty much saying like, it's us against the world. Here we go. I love that movie. It's a painful movie to watch. It's a hard book to read. In fact, the book is much more difficult to read. I really admire what Scorsese accomplished in that film. The end of the movie, spoiler alert, the end of the movie is not the same as the end of the book. The book does not end with him holding the cross in his hand. That was the decision that the filmmakers, Scorsese and his team, decided to add in to make it more hopeful. So your criticism, Harrison, of the movie is not accurate. In fact, the other part of it too is that after he apostatizes from his faith to save a bunch of dying Japanese Catholics, because this is the brutal torture that was going on, to the point where the priest, he's losing his mind. He's been tortured. It's brutal, the methods that they use. He then has an arranged marriage with the Japanese woman and has to live this life in Japan. She's the one that sneaks the cross into his hand before he's to be burned in a basket per the custom at the time. She sneaks it in, and it's a really lovely scene where you can see her kind of looking around, and she puts a little note in, and the guards are watching her. She puts the cross in, and then it ends. And I think that says so much more about her, a non-Catholic Japanese woman who knew this mattered to this man that I lived the rest of his life with. This mattered to him so much so that if I can contribute any way to make sure that Christ knows that he is loved by this man, I will do so. And I thought it was lovely. I thought it was really lovely. And again, and I say in the piece I wrote, it's like a woman sets the tone.
That's right. Because she saw in him, even though this was an arranged marriage, that he truly was who he was, and his devotion to Christ never left, and she didn't have to do this. In fact, it was risky, as you say, yet her heart and spirit inspired her to do so. And as you do point out, once again, a woman set the tone.
It's
so
funny.
Thanks for the reference, Mr. Butker.
The movie came out right before, I think it came out in 2016 or 17.
Yes.
It was right in the midst of, the start of our country really diving into all this division and really amplifying all of these, politically as a church. So it is interesting that he brought it up. And I thought it was powerful. I actually went back and rewatched some of it this past weekend as I was just praying about it, thinking about it. And it's like, wow, it's amazing how art serves for different moments in history. And it comes back up and you sit with it and you go, wow, it's such a curious, because it's this little gem of a movie that didn't get appreciated when it was kind of just, people didn't know what to do with it. And it just kind of snuck in there in Scorsese's catalog. but as a film too, it's a really lovely piece of art. I think it's definitely, if you have the stomach for it, it's intense, but
Yeah.
I would give it a watch.
Yeah. Actually, I watched it on the plane over to my pilgrimage in La Puy.
Oh,
So
wow.
that really, it got
On a
me all
plane?
focused on that. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, definitely.
The poor
But
person sitting
again,
next to you.
the artist, I'm so grateful for the artists in our world, because I
Yeah.
really feel they are the soul of society, and they keep bringing us back,
Yeah.
calling us back to who we really are. People called to
Yeah.
love, people to create community through unity. And
So,
we don't all have to be the same. We don't
right.
want to all be the same. But
Yeah.
because of that wonderful gift of diversity, we can still be one.
Yeah, and random side note here about this. This is just a fun little thing. Shishaktu Endu's other book is called A Life of Jesus. He's written a bunch, but he wrote one called A Life of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really interesting series of portraits of what Jesus's life was like and what we think it could have been like. Scorsese's been trying to develop that into a film, and that looks like it's going to be his next project. Okay. So get ready, because it's probably going to start some good conversations, but I'm very eager to see, because it's a really, really interesting book.
Yeah, we'll have to stay tuned for that,
But
just to say, okay, finish.
Yeah, well, just to put this into the bigger picture and bigger perspective, you and I have been collaborating on a few projects regarding the upcoming, election year in a nonpartisan way. We're really looking at how our church is calling us to look at all the issues, look at the bigger picture, and really discern. So we have an event that we're doing. We're doing this week here. We're going to record it. So if you miss it live, we will be giving it to the people through this YouTube channel here, presenting it soon. So that'll be really exciting. And a few other projects will be coming out too.
Right, because we're doing this event, this gathering virtually, because it's the start of Laudato Si week.
Yep.
Really remembering and going more deeply into the encyclical that Pope Francis wrote about over 10 years now, Laudato Si. And then the follow-up more recently, Laudato Deum. And then you'll see more and hear more, September 1st, that begins the season of creation. So again, always bringing this to the forefront, because it is also beyond just the two-legged human beings. It's about all of life. We're going to be pro-life. We need to be pro-life in the most expansive way, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Cristian, I just we could wrap this up, and I'm sure you'll get mixed reactions to your shared words, but I just want to say, from the world of the Sisters of Saint Joseph and the family of Joseph, great gratitude for sharing your story as well as your commitment to the mission. Many have commented, well said, powerful reflection, how we've teamed up with a fine human being. And then one says, you truly are a Mr. of St. Joseph. Wonderful piece, beautiful.
Mr.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
so
cool.
Yeah, so that's so wonderful to work with you, as always, for sure.
Oh, you too. I mean, I tell everybody when I get to be at a barbecue and people say, oh, what do you do for work? And I say, I work with the Sisters of St. Joseph. It brings me so much joy to see their eyes go, huh, and explain to them, especially people that are like, oh, nuns, sisters. And I say, yeah, well, let me open up your mind a bit, and just reveal the way that I feel so supported and empowered. And it's really lovely. It's a lovely collaboration. I'm really, and this little article is a perfect example of that, because it was nothing but support and excitement. And whereas so many other places in our world would say, let's not say something. Yeah. We're better off not saying, whereas everybody here was just like, this is great.
Yeah, and sometimes it is better off not saying anything. Sure. However, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah. So the gratitude is mutual.
Great. And so we continue to work so that all may be one, because that is the prayer of Jesus, right?
All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, until next time.
All right, have a good week, everybody.